All right, so in this video, we're going to be going over prompting. So specifically focusing on the agent instructions and the personality. So let's start with what those two are. The agent instructions are basically what it does, okay, and when it does it. So those are two very important concepts to understand. And the personality is how it does it, right? So what does it say? How does it say it? In what tone? At what point, does it say that? Are there clarifications beforehand? Like there's certain personality traits, mannerisms that you could bake into your agent depending on the industry that you're in. And so we're going to cover a few things. I'm going to start with the most important instruction handling I think applies to almost every single voice agent that exists out there, which is gathering information. So, for example, when booking an appointment, you typically need a few things. One of those being is a name. You need their name, and likely you probably need it spelled correctly, or you want it spelled correctly. You also need their email address, and that's extremely important that you get right. Okay, it's extremely important that the model doesn't put in an email address that isn't what they said it was. Okay, so there's a couple of components that are really hard to get past. And can seem really hard, at least if you don't know how to properly set your agent up for success. And we'll take a step back and look at the architecture one more time. So these are instructions that we generated in video 1.2 for creating our agent. And we're going to work off of this for our demonstration here. But one of the biggest things is actually being able, well, let's start with the infrastructure one more time. So with any voice agent, at least today, at the time of making this video, they operate off of three main AI systems. Okay, the first AI system is a transcriber. Okay, and I'll just type this out right here. Transcriber. Okay, what this does is hears audio and converts it to text. So if you've ever used a system like Siri, a lot of the times, which hopefully I didn't just activate mine, but a lot of the times what ends up happening is you speak to it and it doesn't actually hear you. Okay, there's a system in between the layer of intelligence and the layer that collects the audio and converts it into something the intelligence can work with. So transcriber, there we go, I spelled that incorrectly. Like I said, what it does is it hears audio and converts it to text. So I might say something like, I need to book an appointment. Okay, what ends up happening is I'm speaking this in audio form. Okay, so this out in the world, but it's not actually typed out in anything. And for most of our intelligent systems as of today, 99.9% of them, they don't work off of audio data. They work off of text data. So what we need to do is transcribe this into something that can be typed out. So literally needs to be heard or be typed out as I need to book an appointment. So the primary purpose of the transcriber is to take audio and to convert it into text data. The reason that's important is because if you've ever opened your ChatGPT app, most of the time you type to it. Okay, there is a version in the ChatGPT app itself where you can speak to it, but it literally does this exact same process underneath the hood so quickly that it doesn't seem like it's actually doing it. But in reality, what's happening is it's taking your audio, converting it into text as if you had typed it out, and then sending it to ChatGPT. A lot of you may already understand this, but that's the main gist of the transcriber and the purpose of it. Okay. The other step of the transcriber, which isn't talked about much, is giving us insight into when to speak. Okay. This is super important. Rewind that. This is super important, understanding when to speak. Okay. Because if you don't know when the model needs to speak, you start getting issues like interrupting the customer or the prospect mid-sentence. Okay, they might have stopped like this to kind of think about what they're going to say, and then the model starts speaking on top of them. You don't want that. So our transcribers that we use have a learned network that gives us a signal of when to speak. All right, and when we get that signal, we send that over to our language model to generate a response. So we take everything they said, convert it into text, and we send that to our language model. Okay. When we get that response, we then send the response from our language model like ChatGPT, and we send it to our third layer, which is the audio model, or otherwise known as the voice. And the primary purpose of this is to actually speak out what was said by the language model. Great. Now that we have those three systems put in place, I'll just type this out. Language model to response. Okay, so I'll remove this just to keep it simple. We've got a transcriber as the first layer, the language model as the second, and the audio model as the third. So the first thing that happens is our system hears what the person said. We respond to what the person said via text, but obviously you can't hear texts, right? You have to actually play that out, send it to something that can speak it. And that's where the audio model comes in, the voice. It actually speaks out what was said by the previous system. All right, and you get a full life cycle here. So after that's done, most of the time, we go back to step one, and we start to transcribe what the person said. So it's really what it is we're just dealing with this system, but we have a couple of other layers that allow this system to work through the phone. So they don't have to type anything out. They don't have to read anything. They just speak and they hear back a response. That is the three layers that we're working with. However, these three layers come with their own issues, okay? And as we kind of started to outline in our previous videos, 1.2, creating your first agent, you start running into issues where the transcriber might not hear what the person said accurately, okay? So if they're in a noisy environment and you need to capture select information that's really important, most of the time noisy environments don't interfere that much with the transcriber. It's when you need information like an email address where the audio quality becomes really important. And if you're in a noisy environment, then that audio quality becoming, interfered with can actually disrupt the hearing process of some of these things. It's really easy to hear words, but letters, numbers, that kind of stuff start to get really, sensitive to poor data. Okay. Now let's discuss what that means. Okay. Back to our transcriber. If I wanted to give a language model my email address, the first thing we'd want to discuss is, can it hear that correctly? So if I say Slavi@agentvoice.com, you heard that, right? But to somebody who doesn't know how my name is spelt, that can be a tricky one. And so you want your agent to be able to know, hey, we need to confirm if this is correct, okay? So it's a lot easier to confirm if it was correct if it was heard correctly the first time. So I'll preface with that, okay? So if I spelled it out like SLAVI at agentvoice.com, you're a lot more likely to get the response or hear the right thing the first time than if I just said Slavi@agentvoice.com. Okay, but let's just say in the scenario the user is a little they just go out and say their full email address, right? You might actually get it right the first time. That happens a lot of the times. The models can hear it, they know how to put the email address together well, and there's no issues. But sometimes there's a misspell. There's something that's not, correct, and you start running into this loop where the language model might say, okay, I got Slavi@agentvoice.com. The way the audio model speaks it out makes it sound like we heard the right email address. But in reality, the I at the end of my name got converted to a Y. Okay, and this happens all the time, okay? You might be looking at somebody whose name, is Mary or Marie, but it's spelled in a way that you didn't expect, or maybe you thought was different. And the first shot isn't the right shot. So what we like to do is, when addressing situations where audio is really important, we try to get the user to give us the most information up front. So, for example, I need an email address. Could you please spell it letter by letter for me? Okay, what most people will do is they'll spell their first name or whatever that initial part is, SLAVI, then they'll just say @agentvoice.com. And that increases the odds that we get it right, but there's still a chance for error in case agent voice is spelled funky. Okay, so what we like to do is, once we get that response and we ask them to spell it out, the audio model the language model still needs to confirm. So it might say something like, okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Slavi. So your email address is slavi@agentvoice.com. And then they say, okay, yes, that sounds correct. Perfect. You got it right. However, what's really important is we want to make sure the audio model spells out that full email address. So make sure to spell out email addresses in full to make sure we have 100% of the right information before creating an appointment. That's a simple prompt that we would include. And so we might even say in full, and then in parentheses, we could add character by character, like SLAVI A-G-E-N-T-B-O-I-C. Like this. Okay, so make sure to spell out email addresses in full, character by character, like SLAVI at AGENTVOICE.com. To make sure we have 100% of the right information before creating an appointment. This will void out almost all of your issues, because if this is spelled incorrectly, the person on the other line will hear that and they can correct the agent. Okay, so that's super important to understand. So instead of an I, it's a Y. Okay, in my name at the beginning of the email, instead of a Y, it's an I. Okay, and so they'll correct the agent in case there was a misspelling. But if they spell it out to begin with, this is a lot less likely to be wrong. So it's important to set the transcriber up for success. So prompt the agent to ask them to spell it out letter by letter, and you increase the odds of getting your email address. Okay, that covers a lot of different things, like getting an ID number, right? Getting some sort of name or phone number, right? Spell those things out clearly, number by number. Please don't say 98 130 642 40. Like, don't say that. Try to say it number by number. It is a little inconvenient for the user, but what's more inconvenient for the user is having an incorrect email address or phone number plugged into a system that they're, expecting to be correct. So taking those steps initially might cost a little bit of extra time, but it's saving you a lot of trouble. So that's a really important key aspect to actually instructing agents. When it comes to collecting information, which is what most voice agents need to be able to do. When it comes to traditional script following or instruction following, the agents excel in those areas. They do really well at saying, here's what you need to ask first, then you need to do this, then you need to do that. Those are super simple things. Instructing it, you don't need to be an expert in doing it. You just need to understand how to properly lay that out, which is just explaining it to someone who has no idea how your business operates, and what the script should look like, and you're set up for success. Okay. The biggest thing in terms of user experience when they're speaking to a voice agent, I'm going to remove this, is the response length. Okay. So voice agents, by default, most language models, they want to be more helpful than not. A byproduct of that is getting responses that are really, really long. Okay. So even 3 sentences is really long. I mean, when you're talking to someone on a phone and you're going back and forth, 3 sentences can seem unusually long. And that's where you want to avoid the most. You want responses compacted into the best way possible. Like if you can get a response to be one continuous sentence, that's the best way to go about it. Okay. So a lot of the times what I like to do is, if we look at the instructions I provided here, when speaking to the customer, you need to make sure that you never ask more than one question at a time. Okay, so what voice models do by default, like I said, they're trying to be as helpful as they possibly can, but they're not super great at understanding what they actually sound like. So you need to give it instructions on what it needs to do so that it sounds really good. And this might be different based off of the industry, but they'll ask more than one question at a time, and that's not a good thing to do. And also a byproduct of that is somebody might ask a question and they'll get a response to their question, but then they'll get an unnatural follow-up to that response. So yeah, that's great. We're open on these hours. What time were you thinking about coming in? A lot of the times that's not important. A follow-up question isn't important. And you might argue that in a lot of sales positions, etc., that is important. But from the user experience, focusing on that purely, if that's what we want to improve, then we do not want to be asking a question after every response. Okay, there's some situations that warrant a question after answering something or making a statement. Most of the time, though, it's unusual. It seems like the agent's trying to fulfill a task rather than actually listen. So just being able to respond, just give an answer and shut up, is really important. So that's where this follows up. Very rarely should you ask a question after answering, unless that question would help you answer their previous question better. Okay. So if this next question is pertinent or related to what they just said, then that's great. Okay. So that actually makes it sound like they're being heard, and it's not just a task, but you're focused on helping them. And a lot of the times that's what that might be. but you don't want to overdo this, like I said, or it does feel unnatural. If you listen to any two people converse, it's never like that. It's never response, question, response, question. It's sometimes simple as a response of yes, right? That's correct. Somebody might say, hey, just wanted to come in. I just want to make sure you guys are open. It's like, yeah, we're open right now. That's all they needed to know. They don't need another question. They don't need to go down this deep dive of whatever. They just need a quick answer, and that's it. Okay. The third step here is keeping responses concise and natural. Any response, like I was saying earlier, that goes over really one sentence can start to feel like a prolonged response. It can feel unnaturally long. And so in any conversation, it's nice to have the other person feel like they're engaged, not just responding or saying something to a system that can respond to them. So keeping something back and forth is really important, okay? And baking that into the actual life cycle of the conversation can sometimes seem tricky, okay? So what I put here is try to keep responses under 2 sentences. And when explaining complex things, you can exceed that, but work towards responding and answering questions as quickly as possible. I'll fix some of the verbiage here. There we go. When explaining complex things, you can exceed that, but work towards responding and answering questions as quickly as possible. That is what we want in most user experiences. So with that being said, that covers a lot of, being able to write effective system prompts and instructions. That covers a lot of the experience of speaking with a voice agent, and setting the response style and personality. I should warn you that going too deep into that and focusing on behavior or specific behavioral instructions, like I want you to sound warm, have a warm, natural tone. Believe it or not, instructing that into a voice agent does less than what you might think. A lot of that comes into the voice that you select that fits how you want the agent to sound. So, in other words, you don't really need to put in here, you need to sound warm and have a natural and helpful tone. That's just filling stuff up that the models already do to begin with. So you don't need to really specify those things. Focus more on, specific behavior that you want to hear. Now, the last thing I'm going to go over is the actual prompting and instructing when it comes to scripts. Okay. So let's do an inbound script, for example. Okay. And you'll notice that these placeholders are hinting at something that you should pay a lot of attention to. One of the biggest things is telling the model when to shut up. Okay. So in this initial response, you can see that it says, thank you for calling. I'd be happy to help you with that. What brings you to us today? Okay. So right after that, you see where it says wait for response. Okay. That is an important signal the model needs to hear so that it doesn't continue to try to, say parts of the script that need further input from the person it's speaking with. So what brings you to us today? And could you tell me a little bit more about, et cetera? It's like, no. We want to say, could you tell me a little bit more about their specific reason after you've waited for that response, not as soon as you've said that. So including clear instructions on when to say what and how to do it is really important. So initial response, you could say this, right? And instead of qualification, you might say like, after response, say this. So if you want it to be very structured, or in this case, it's saying qualification, right? So you could ideally set up different paths for how you want to take the conversation based off of the previous result. So for example, if user is having issue with logging in, go down step 2. Type out step 2. I'll just type something out. Have you tried resetting your computer? Resetting is not right. Restarting. Now, that's obviously way too simple of what it needs to be, but just giving you an example here. So what we can see here is the initial part of the inbound script says try to collect information about what the caller is struggling with. If the user has already mentioned having issues with logging in, go down to step 2. Have you tried restarting your computer? Step 1 is tell me a little bit more about what you're experiencing if you don't mind. So ideally we'd prompt in this case that we are trying to collect information, right? We're trying to figure out and triage what it is that they're struggling with. Until we have that, we don't want to take them down a specific path. Okay, and we could even name this to path 2, right? So path 2, path 1. There we go. So now that we have our paths identified, which, let me see here. Path 1 is just trying to get more information out of them, okay? Once we have that, we can identify what each path is for. Is it for, logging in? Are you having an issue with payments? Do you need a refund? How to handle those refunds? All go under their own individual paths. And then what we can say here, like I said, is wait for response. It's really important to have this signal. Otherwise, the model might say something like, have you tried restarting your computer after saying, tell me a little bit more about what you're experiencing if you don't mind. So as you can see here, it's really important to tell it to stop after it says this. You can say wait for response or, stop here or wait. But wait for response has worked the best in all the use cases I've seen. So now if we go back up here to test this agent, so let's go ahead and hit test and let's do inbound, right? Because we're focusing on our inbound instructions. I'm going to go ahead and tell it I'm having an issue with logging in. So let's try it.
Hi, thanks for calling Agent Voice. I'm James, your virtual assistant. To better assist you today, may I please have your name?
Actually, I'm just having an issue logging in.
Thanks for letting me know. Have you tried restarting your computer?
Perfect. So it's following that path 2 correctly. However, if you notice, it said, thanks for letting me know. That's another thing that voice agents like to do is they like to share gratitude when you provide them information. So I don't like that as much. And that's totally up to you and how you want to do it. But I'm going to add a further set of instructions in our core instructions to say, do not say thanks or anything alike for users providing information. I don't like that because it's kind of, I can see where that makes sense, but a lot of the times it's not really natural. I don't like that. I just like getting straight into it, try to follow the script. There we go. That might be a little bit more of a signal for it to avoid that. So let's try it again.
Hi, thanks for calling Agent Voice. I'm James, your virtual assistant. To better assist you today, may I please have your name?
Hey, James, I'm just having trouble logging in.
Have you tried restarting your computer?
So obviously that's a terrible thing to say because restarting your computer really doesn't have much to do with logging in. But I'm just showing you for an example how I work towards altering it so that I get the exact responses that I want. And so I'd keep going down this path. As you see, it skipped path 1 because I instructed if the user has already mentioned having issues with logging in, go to step 2. Okay, and I should have said phase 2 here because we changed, or not phase, path 2. Since we changed the actual labels of these, but it worked anyways. The model was able to figure out exactly what I was trying to get it to do. So this is kind of a walkthrough of what we just did. I'd like to go down a path of collecting their information and supporting a ticket, right? Submitting a support ticket. If unable to resolve, we'll just say this. I put a quote here by accident. Gather their email address to start a support ticket. So I'm going to give it context on what it's doing and why it's doing. And then what I'm going to do, put a little arrow and just say, perfect. So now let's run through that scenario one more time.
Hi, thanks for calling Agent Voice. I'm James, your virtual assistant. To better assist you today, may I please have your name?
Yeah, James, I'm just having a little bit of trouble.
All right. Tell me a little bit more about what you're experiencing, if you don't mind.
I can't log in.
Have you tried restarting your computer?
I have, and it didn't help.
Can I have your email address to submit a support ticket?
Yeah, it's lobby@agentvoice.com.
Got it. Lobby@agentvoice.com. I'll submit a support ticket for you. And someone will reach out soon. Is there anything else I can help with today?
And going back to our initial instructions, I have the agent muted, but you noticed that it said lobby, and I said Slavy. It's not the right name, okay? So I specifically did this so that you could get a feel of how we can fix this problem. So let's go ahead and back out of this, okay? Otherwise, we're going to end up in a cycle where I keep saying, no, it's Slavy, not lobby, right? And the transcriber can't really hear the difference. So what we're going to do is, can I have your email address to support a ticket, to submit a support ticket? We're going to add a little thing here. Please spell it letter by letter, as it can be really hard to hear over the phone. Well, let's just do the hear. Let's go ahead and restart that to see how well that worked.
Hi, thanks for calling Agent Voice. I'm James, your virtual assistant. To better assist you today, may I please have your name?
Hey, James, I'm just having an issue logging in.
Have you tried restarting your computer?
No, I haven't.
Would you mind restarting your computer and then trying to log in again? Sometimes that can resolve login issues. Let me know if the problem persists.
It's been going on for a while now, and I've tried it on different devices.
Can I have your email address to submit a support ticket? Please spell it letter by letter, as it can be hard to hear specific letters over the phone.
All right, let's run that back just to see how well that worked.
Hi, thanks for calling Agent Voice. I'm James, your virtual assistant. To better assist you today, may I please have your name?
Hey, James, I can't log in. I need help logging in. I've tried everything.
Have you tried restarting your computer?
Yes, of course I have.
Can I have your email address to submit a support ticket? Please spell it letter by letter, as it can be really hard to hear specific letters over the phone.
Yeah, it's slavi@agentvoice.com.
Just to confirm, your email is S as in Sam, L as in Lima, A as in Alpha, V as in Victor, I as in India @agentvoice.com. Is that correct?
You got it.
I'll submit a support ticket for you right away so our team can help resolve your login issue. Is there anything else you need help with today?
That'll be it. Thank you, James.
You're welcome. Goodbye, and have a great day.
Perfect. Perfect. So now if we go into our calls, we can see the transcript of how that took place, and you can see how the transcriber was picking up on what I said. And you can see that it helped the model pick up on exactly what I said. That way we didn't have any back and forth. And as per my core instructions, which is why it spelled it in native phonetic alphabet, that's why we got the Sam, S as in Sam, L as in Lima, A as in Alpha response. Otherwise, if you don't want that native phonetic, it still sounds pretty good, just saying SLAVI. It can do that just fine. But I like the native phonetic. It slows it down, gives the person a chance to hear it letter by letter and verify that as it's being said. That way, it's just a higher chance of success in that sense. So there we go. That's what we got. And that covers a lot of the issues there. So if we look at this here, let me see here. There we go. If we look at me not spelling my name or not being prompted to do it letter by letter, this is what I said. I said slavi@agentvoice.com, and here's what it got. And so it's not the agent's fault. It's just that the transcriber can't tell what I'm saying. It's just not working well. So I might be able to improve that by really focusing on the pronunciation, but no one's doing that. They're going to say their email address. So giving them instructions on how to say that sets your voice agent up for success. As you can notice, all the responses are straight to the point. It doesn't, have any fluff with, oh, thank you for sharing that. And there's no questions that are being followed up with after responses and that kind of stuff. So it's, we're able to solve the user's issue or get to some sort of solution within a minute right? And that's our goal. So that covers a lot of different topics on writing effective instructions for your agent and how that's done and implemented in a real conversational flow. So I hope this helps. In our next video, we'll be going over agent actions. Okay, so how to set up pre-call, in-call, post-call actions, going over tools and what tools are. So if we look at our agents, there's a lot of stuff under this tools tab, like, transfers, leaving voicemails, working the keypads, searching the web, handling appointments, all that kind of stuff. Some pre-call tools like DNC checks. All that stuff will be covered in our next video, which is going to be 3.2, covering agent tools, so actions and integrations. And hopefully that'll be helpful in understanding how to get your agent connected to the outside world, specifically your own platform, software, and tools that you use. All right, I'll see you there.